Are you ready for a good indie movie about a very, very bad road trip? Then let's talk about The Passenger. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm talking about The Passenger, which is coming to theaters on June 3rd, 2022, and DVD and on demand on June 28th, 2022. It's a Spanish indie horror film that follows this group of strangers on this road trip when a lot of very bad things happen, and it has a lot going for it. My hot take is ultimately I think it's a rental, but this is a very well done indie film. It has a lot going for it, including some really good practical effects, some really great music, and some very interesting characters and some fun relationships that develop along the way. But the film does have a little bit of a slow pace, and the creature characteristics seem to be a little fluid. I didn't really get a good sense of what the creature could and couldn't do. So ultimately, I think it's a rental. But again, this is a very good indie film. So if you check it out, I think you'll probably be happy. So I'm going to tell you a little more about the film, a few things I like, and a few things I didn't like about it. So like I said, in The Passenger, you have a group of strangers. The main character is Blasco, who's played by Ramiro Blas. He is this kind of like gruff, old, chauvinistic character. And he's very grating at the start. And he is driving this mother-daughter pair, Mariela and Marta, and this other passenger, Lida, over like to this town. They have to kind of go over a mountain. It's kind of a long journey through this town. And Blasco has this old van that's been with him through thick and thin. He calls it Nessa. It's kind of like his baby. And a lot of the question is, will Nessa make it? Is this, how long is it going to take? But then some other strange things start happening during the trip that make this a much more harrowing journey for everyone involved. So things I liked about this movie. The first is the practical effects. Look, I love that this film focused on practical effects. It's one of my pet peeves. I really don't like VFX unless they're very, very well done. And it's very tough to do that. So especially in an indie film, if they use practical effects, it usually comes off a lot better. And I love seeing indie films, especially indie horror films, that rely on practical, prosthetic type effects. And this film does that. I talked to one of the directors, and he said that the co-director, Raúl Cerezo, is just adamant about using practical effects whenever possible, and I am all for that. I love it. There's a very good use of practical effects. It made it much more immersive, and it also made it so you didn't really break your suspension of disbelief. There were some, VFX, but they were very smartly done, so you didn't notice it. The second thing I really love, and this is something I didn't really expect to, is the music. And it's not like the road trip music specifically, but in this film, Blasco loves these like old bullfighting songs, these pasodobles that play occasionally throughout the film, and they especially play during some pretty harrowing scenes. I loved that. I love when it did that. They're kind of grandiose and kind of powerful songs. And it was a really interesting contrast to have that over some very bad things that are happening. I really liked how the directors used that music and also just kind of introduced it. It's not something I normally listen to, and I really liked hearing it. The third thing I really liked are the interesting characters. Everyone in this, every character, every passenger on this trip has some layers. They have some past issues, or they have things that they're going through. They're not one dimensional. And so I liked how everyone had something else about them, and you kind of learn about that throughout the trip. And I think the most interesting is Blasco, because he's also the main character, but he is someone that has a lot of distinct aspects about his personality. Like I said, he starts off as very gruff, but as he interacts with people, you kind of start to see a little bit more of his humanity. And throughout this journey, he continues to surprise you. And one thing that was surprising is kind of his budding friendship with Marta, who's the, I don't know, the teenager in this movie, played by Paula Gallego, because they are very different characters and they shouldn't get along, but they do. They kind of develop this fun friendship and kind of mutual respect throughout this journey. And it's a really kind of nice thing to see. And it's very gradual. It's a very nice slow build. It's nice to watch over this journey. And the last thing I really liked is the cinematography. There are some really great camera shots. And the highlight is there's some shots that have this like split camera where you have one character, like the person in the front seat. This van setup has two people in the front seat and then two people in kind of like the back section. There's a back seat, but it's really like a back section. And the people in front are Blasco and Marta, and the people in the back are Lida and Mariela. And the film has this really great effect where you'll have a split view, where you'll have a really close-up view of the person in the front seat, and then kind of a still in focus, but further back, darker view of the person in the backseat. And it's a really nice way to show this conversation because it does kind of fit with the road trip theme, but it also shows the distance between the people in the front seat and the people in the back seat. There's physical and psychological kind of divisions that happen between the front seat and the back seat people. And that's a really great way to show it. So things I didn't like I said, it's kind of a slower journey. The film is a road trip, but there's not really a ton that happens. A lot of it is a little more of a thriller, so you're waiting for some things to happen. A lot of it is conversation, which I normally like. So you're finding out more about these people, but it's a horror film ultimately, and it does take a long time to kind of have the horror develop. And so that led to kind of a slower start and maybe some scenes partway through that don't have as much excitement as I was expecting. So it's not a big criticism. It's just something I noticed and something that kind of made the film slow down at parts. And the second thing I didn't love is that there's kind of like an inconsistency to the creatures in this film, and I'm going to tell you a little about the creatures. So spoilers if you don't want to know what happens. But the creatures appear to be like, I don't know, some sort of alien, something that appears to have come from space, and they take the form of this like worm that gets into the host and then kind of turns them into almost a zombie. But the thing that I didn't love is that it seems like the effect was a little bit mixed. When Marta got one, she had a small worm that got into her body, and that affected her very little bit, but she was able to just pull it out and almost seemingly have no big effects. It didn't like take over her quickly. Maybe that's because it was a baby, but it did feel inconsistent with some of the other characters who do get taken over by this like worm, a much larger version of the worm, but they get taken over by the worm and then they are like fully under its control. And sometimes they go slow, sometimes they go a little more fast, sometimes they pass the parasite on to others, and sometimes they just kill. It didn't really feel like there was much rhyme or reason to what was happening, other than they are like very freaky and like scary and to be avoided. But other than that, like I just wish that there was a little bit more kind of, I don't know, better parameters for what they could do, because it did feel like everything was kind of changing and I wasn't really sure what this parasite was doing and like what what the people that were infected, what they could and couldn't do. So again, two not very major things. Like I said, I think this film is ultimately a rental, but if you do watch it, it is a pretty well done indie horror film. It has some, like I said, interesting characters, good practical effects, and some really great music. So if you watch it, you will not be disappointed. I think it's ultimately a rental, but it's definitely something that you should check out. So that is The Passenger. It comes out on June 3rd, 2022 in theaters, and also on DVD and on demand on June 28th, 2022. So thanks so much for watching. If you like this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. And also please check out my other content. For this film specifically, I have an interview with the co-director, Fernando González Gómez, that was very, very insightful, very fascinating. He tells a little bit about how the film was made and some of the most interesting kind of shots. So I think you should definitely check that out, and please check out the rest of my content. Thank you.